Well, good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to the winter edition of the Water Quality Advisory Workgroup meeting, or stakeholder meeting that we hold on a quarterly basis, and it's sponsored by the Water Quality Division of the TCEQ. We thank you for your attendance today. My name is Greg Easley, and I'll be moderating this afternoon's meeting for you. I manage the Water Quality Assessment section here in the division. And before I introduce the individuals that will be presenting updates to you today, I wanted to first go over a couple things about them to bring to your attention. First, we would like for all of you to register your attendance with us for this afternoon's meeting. And if you haven't already done so, would ask you to kindly go over to the link that's provided in the Q&A box on your screen. Click on that link and it'll take you to the registration page, and there you can fill in the requested information, and we would greatly appreciate you doing that. Secondly, just want to make you aware that if you look at the meeting agenda, the questions and answers session will be near the end of the meeting after we've gone through all of the updates that we have for you today. And the way that will work is that as questions come to you during the course of the meeting, feel free to type those into the Q&A box on your screen. And when we get to the Q&A session near the end of the meeting, we will go through each question in the order that they were received and respond to them. So as I mentioned just before, you can type in those questions at any time during the meeting, and we'll get to them near the end. So with that, I will now introduce you to the speakers for this afternoon's meeting. We have with us today Robert Sadler, who is the Deputy Director of the Water Quality Division. Also with us is Erica Crespo, the Assistant Deputy Director of the Division. Also have Dr. Cole Gray, who's a permit coordinator on the industrial permits team. Paul Broshai, who's an engineer in the plans and specifications group here in the division. Peter Schaefer is team leader of the standards implementation team. Rebecca Villalba is team leader of the stormwater team. Michaela Coleman is permit coordinator on the stormwater team. Shannon Gibson, who is a technical specialist for the division. And lastly, we have Lewis Herron, who's the lead engineer in the plans and specifications review group. So those are going to be your presenters today. And we're going to first start off the meeting with several permitting process updates. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Robert Sadler to give his update.
Good afternoon. Thanks for attending today's meeting. As Greg said, I'm Robert Sadler, Deputy Director of the Water Quality Division. And today I'll be speaking briefly about the division's efficiency initiatives, and then I'll be inviting you all to get involved. So over the past several months, there has been a division-wide focus on examining our permitting processes and seeking opportunities to add efficiencies and/or remove redundancies. We've already implemented ideas such as the development of new internal tools for real-time workload tracking, and we've set more aggressive internal review timeframes. Over the course of the pandemic and our shift to telework, we've moved away from hard copy correspondence toward email correspondence as much as our rules allow. For example, most notice of deficiency items are handled via email now, which supports a quicker resolution. We are assessing opportunities to develop new general permits to offer streamlined options for permittees and to reduce the volume of individual permits received. We're reviewing our application forms and considering how to make them more user-friendly. We're also discussing creating video resources to assist applicants in filling out applications. Additionally, we've requested electronic copies of applications, and we've requested pre-application meetings for new and major amendment applications, as well as pre-treatment program modifications. Erica Crespo, the division's Assistant Deputy Director, will talk more about those items in a few minutes. As I've noted in previous stakeholder meetings, this efficiency initiative is an effort that we are unlikely to successfully undertake without support from you all in the regulated community. Over the past several months, we have received feedback from some of you during meetings on specific topics or through spontaneous discussion. We want to continue to engage in regular dialogue with interested members of the regulated community regarding our efficiency initiatives and hear your ideas about opportunities to improve the division's permitting processes. Accordingly, we are creating a subcommittee of the Water Quality Advisory Work Group to engage in regular discussions about our efficiency initiative and receive feedback from external customers. If you're interested in being a part of the stakeholder committee, I would invite you to email outreach@tceq.texas.gov with the subject subcommittee and request to be invited to those subcommittee meetings. The subcommittee meetings will be an opportunity for open dialogue between external stakeholders and representatives of the Water Quality Division. We would like to hear your ideas, get your feedback on our ideas, and learn from your experiences with our processes. We're tentatively targeting the week of February 7th for the first subcommittee meeting, and we'll send out an email regarding the subcommittee after this meeting. So that concludes my brief comments. As I said, if you're interested in participating in the stakeholder subcommittee, please email outreach@tceq.texas.gov with the subject subcommittee and request an invite. Again, I thank you all for attending today's meeting, and we look forward to speaking with you in the future. And with that, I will pass the mic to Erica Crespo, Water Quality Division's Assistant Deputy Director.
Thank you so much, Robert. All right, so I would like to follow Robert's lead and talk a little bit about electronic application submissions, and then also the division, the Water Quality Division, establishing mandatory pre-application meetings for both new and major amendment permit actions. So starting off with electronic application submissions. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic really tested everyone in our ability to adjust to the times. And with that, you know, the telework came into play for our agency, as well as, you know, people across the world working from home in light of all the situation going on. And so for our division, because we issue permits primarily, amongst other things, having the ability to work with electronic applications really makes our jobs a lot easier, as opposed to having to transfer and transition with only hard copy applications. Now, I'm fully aware that our current rules and regulations only require applicants and permittees to submit hard copy applications, but I'm coming before you, you know, following Robert's lead, of course, and talking about how if the regulated community will really work with us by submitting electronic applications for our review, that will really expedite our timeframes and really enable us to go through our technical and administrative review processes with a lot more ease and a lot more efficiency regarding time. Staff within the Water Quality Division work very hard to try to issue permits in exceedance of our current timeframes. And, you know, we really work really hard to try to establish a collaborative working environment with everyone affiliated with the application, not just maybe the applicant, but any consultants, any, you know, technical contacts, administrative contacts. And having electronic applications will allow us to maintain very open, you know, communication, as well as just expedite our review timeframes, like I said earlier. So we have a system in place where, you know, and all the information is available online. So please, 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 if you would help us out by submitting electronic applications in addition to the hard copy applications that are submitted to our division for review, that will really enable us to provide the best customer service that we can for the state of Texas. And so again, I know that we've talked about this before in previous Water Quality Advisory Work Group meetings, but we really would like to encourage the submission of electronic applications in the interest of time and just working to the best of our ability. If you have any questions or concerns about that or our process, or if you experience any difficulties, please feel free to reach out to Robert Sadler and myself directly, and we will definitely assist you throughout the process. But that's really what I would like to take the time to stress, the importance and how much electronic application submissions will benefit us in the work that we do. The last thing that I'd like to talk about before I turn it back over to Greg to move further along in the agenda is for us to talk about the division establishing mandatory pre-application meetings for both new and major amendment permit applications. The reason why the division established this process is because both new and major amendment applications require certain changes or additional information that typically isn't provided in our standard renewal applications. And we just want to ensure that we have all the information up front so that we can work with the applicant or the permittees to really make sure that we're able to issue the permits within a timely manner, because we know that people outside of our agency work very hard to prepare the application and submit the application and work with our staff throughout the permitting process. And we don't want all that effort and that time and those resources to be all for naught. And so allowing the TCEQ and our staff to ask technical and administrative questions, provide guidance and assistance up front, really ensures that what is officially submitted to us meets the standard at which we have to move stuff through our process. And again, it's a way to start off on the right foot by making sure that we're communicating openly. You get really connected with our technical staff, our administrative staff that will be hands-on in that application, as well as, get in touch with management to find out about status updates or just really are in the know. And so because new applications and major amendment applications have their own form of complexity, we are establishing mandatory pre-application meetings for those permit actions. And if you have any questions or concerns about that or how that would impact you individually, please feel free to reach out to Robert Sadler or myself so that we can discuss it. And again, I'd like to reiterate what Robert said earlier, that if you're interested in being a part of our subcommittee that's going to discuss our permitting process, please send that email to our outreach at tceq.texas.gov, I believe is the email address, and we can put that in the chat as well. And we'd love for you to be a part of those future discussions. I have nothing more to add, but thank you so much for your time this afternoon. And Greg, I will hand it back over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Erica and Robert, for those updates. Next up, we have several program-specific updates that we want to give to you. So we'll start off with House Bill 2771 implementation activities, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Cole Gray.
Thanks, Greg. Hello, everyone. So, as Greg said, I'll be discussing House Bill 2771 implementation activities regarding oil and gas general permits. So basic background information, TCEQ was transferred permitting authority for discharges into surface water in the state for oil and gas extraction facilities and gas plants via House Bill 2771 during the 2018 legislative session. TCEQ applied to EPA and was granted federal permitting authority under the MPDES program to authorize these discharges in January of 2021. This transfer of permitting authority authorizes TCEQ to issue one combined state and federal authorization for discharges to surface waters in the state under the TPDES program to replace previous requirements to obtain state authorization from the Railroad Commission, the RRC, and separate federal authorization from EPA. For discharges that TCEQ does not have authority to regulate under the MPDES program, TCEQ will issue authorizations previously required by the Railroad Commission. TCEQ has been in the process of developing two general permits for oil and gas extraction activity discharges into surface waters in the state. One under the TPDES program and another under state-only authority. And The former is TXG 310000 for onshore stripper wells, coastal facilities, and territorial sea facilities. And the latter is WQG 280000 for oil and gas facilities located over the outer continental shelf. So in terms of implementation activities, we have completed a number of projects and assessments. The first one, we did a full assessment and inventory of current RRC and EPA oil and gas permits. And we created a spreadsheet documentation system that houses all those, and we have been maintaining it and updating it regularly. For assessments, we've done core mix dilution modeling to assess impacts of individual toxics relevant to produced wastewater, complex modeling to assess dissolved oxygen impacts of produced water. We've assessed thermal impacts of produced water and assessed pollutants associated with produced wastewater that TCEQ does not currently have established surface water quality standards for. And we have also assessed the application of 30 TAC Chapter 319 metals for wastewater. So in terms of ongoing activities, we've been in the process of developing, reviewing, and revising TPDS General Permit TXG 31. And we've also been in the process of developing, reviewing, and revising the Notice of Intent, Notice of Change, and Notice of Termination for TXG 31. We've also been providing regular guidance to oil and gas customers by answering questions, providing updates on developments, directing customers to available permitting options, and explaining and advising on available permitting options. And for things that are upcoming activities or are near completion, the final revisions for TXG 31, the permit and fact sheet are scheduled to be completed by the end of this week. A submission of TXG 31 to the TCEQ non-rule team for review is expected to be completed by the beginning of next week. And following the non-rule team's review, briefings will be scheduled with TCEQ management to seek approval to send to EPA for their 90-day review. The expected timeframe for that is March 2022. And we are also beginning to development our draft of WQG 280000 and developing the NOI, NOC, and NOT for that. And public notice for both the TXG 31 and WQG 28 are expected in the summer of 2022. And setting the two general permits on commission agenda for issuance is expected in fall or winter of 2022. And those are the basic updates of what we've been working on and where we're heading so far. So now I'll turn it back over to Greg.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gray. I appreciate that. Next up, we've got an update from Paul Broshai on regarding Homeland Security. So take it away, Paul.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, everybody. What I will be talking about is the Homeland Security updates. And if you're familiar or whether you're not familiar with it, what we do on a yearly basis is we collect information on this site level contacts and site level data, lift stations and everything else that could be used when natural disasters hit, so that our strike teams that go out and are the first responders to the natural disasters have the information of locations and who to contact. We are also tasked with making the initial contacts to the wastewater plant operators to assess the criticality of the issues that have arisen from the natural disasters. So with that being said, what we have had in the past, as you might remember from my October review at the stakeholder meeting, that we had an MS Access system which has come to end of life, that has been replaced by a new Oracle database system, which is called the Water Quality Emergency Preparedness Information System, or WQEPS. Some of the recent activities that we've been going on since our last update is that we did the initial migration of data from the Access system to the Oracle system at the end of July. We've reviewed the data and made sure any anomalies were taken care of. We're continuing to add some of the 2021 annual updates that we received into the WQEPS system. The scheduled completion for all 2021 data entry is January 31st of 2022. Currently, we were at approximately 85% or better. We are working on finalizing narration for a series of YouTube videos on how to use the system, which will be in place when the system goes live. We're reviewing the system user manual that was created by our IT staff, and that will also be available once it goes live. We're reviewing and finalizing the online help desk help system. Anytime there is a question mark in a circle, if you click on the question mark, that'll be where you can, the text that is supplied to you. We're working on an outreach calendar to demonstrate the WQEPS system. Currently, we're planning on having, for sure, we're going to have our system available and be demonstrating it at the Texas Water Conference in April. We're going to definitely do the Texas Trade Fair if it occurs in May. And we're looking at possibly doing it at the Water Reuse Conference in the end of March in San Antonio also. We're discussing the possibility of having some Teams live meeting trainings where people can click into the Teams meeting, and we will be demonstrating and talking through the system there. As I said, the initial use of the WQEPS system will be for the 2022 annual update of the Homeland Security Contact and Facility Information. It is a very good system, robust. One of the nice things that can happen with the system is that you'll be able to update everything from your desktop. You won't have to leave your desktop. So it's, everything can be done at one time. It's not a long, arduous process, or you don't have to transcribe onto paper or anything. There's spreadsheets that can be downloaded and uploaded for adding certain information. So the one thing is that you will, when you're using the WQEPS system, you will need to have a STEERS account. If you're familiar with the STEERS procedures, you might want to get on TCEQ's main website and do a search for STEERS to see what you'll need. If you do not have a STEERS electronic reporting account number, you would probably want to do that before the system goes live at the end of the month. The annual process that will be followed is TCEQ will send electronically an email to all active wastewater facilities that we have within our system based on permit number about requesting the annual update. It'll be the letter that goes out will be signed by our Deputy Director, Robert Sadler, and it will indicate what you're supposed to do to get the key for getting into the account number that you have. Once you contact or receive the key, then you can go into the STEERS program, and start performing the data entry on there. There are a bunch of modules in the STEERS program, and one of them is the Water Quality Emergency Preparedness System. Once you have your ER account number and have entered it and logged in, you'll be asked a series of questions about your previous logins. If you have any, that you'll also be required to enter the water quality permit number to obtain the data that we currently have in the system. If you are a new site or have never submitted any emergency contact information in the past, you will not have, what you will have is just the site level information, and that would be populated through the Paris database that is our permit and registration information system. And the population of that data resulted from the creation of your permit. So once you enter all your data, you'll click through a series of windows. I think it's like 10 windows, and you can update your information. Everything is within the system in a series of drop-down windows or entry fields to supply the data that you need to supply. Once you have completed all your windows, you'll electronically sign the document, sign the form, and then you will submit it, and you'll receive a confirmation email of your submittal. Some things that you might want to keep in mind, if after reviewing the system, if there's no changes, it's just a next window or save next, and you can continue to move through the window if there are no changes to the existing information. So if your contact information doesn't change from 1 year to the next, there's no updates that need to be done. You will be done relatively quickly. If you have to enter data, it may take a while depending on how much data you're giving. As I said, you'll need to have a STEERS ER account number and a password to enter the system. Single users, if the same person is updating multiple accounts, they can be associated to that water quality permit so that they can update the information that they need to with that same user ID. Every water quality permit will have a different key. So if you obtain one key, it will only get you into one permit and one set of contact and site level information in order to update. The regulated entity users can set certain access rights. So if one person is going to be responsible for submitting and others are going to be responsible for doing the entry, they can set it up that way that one main account has the submittal and signature authority, and then the others can do the data entry for them. One drawback to the system is that the STEERS system is based on a 20-minute time limit for each window. So as soon as you click next save, the next window pops up onto your screen. You will see a 20-minute countdown start in the upper right-hand corner. My suggestion is that you save early, save often while you're doing the data entry into the system. because if you get a phone call and your phone call lasts longer than 20 minutes, you will have lost some of the data that you have entered that you have not yet saved. Some suggestions that I have to make the process easier is gather your information before you sit down at your computer to start the data entry. Have the names, phone numbers, addresses that you need to so that you can enter them without having to worry about searching and trying to find the information before the 20-minute time limit on the window where you're entering it. Know your Latin longs of your plant site. Know the Latin longs of your lift stations if you're going to enter lift station data. Also, when it comes to the lift stations, since one of the big items that part of our emergency preparedness system allows us to do is to help the FEMA when natural disasters hit, to supply generators for lift stations and sites that need it. A latitude and longitude is entered. It's a, you've got the degrees and then the digital minutes and seconds. So it's either 2 or 3 digits on the degrees, a decimal point followed by 6 digits. So if you're having a lift station or a wastewater treatment plant where you're going to be putting in a generator, it's good to have the generator information that you'll need, like the voltage, the size in kilowatts, the amperage, the phase, and the fuel type that is used. That way we can have that into the system already. One of the other questions that is asked, and it's a window that you're going to tab into, is your system, does it have, we would consider your system a parent? Does your system have a child that, or a separate wastewater system that your collection system accepts the wastewater from and your wastewater treatment plant treats? So that's some of the information that we need to know. But once you get it all in, it's a very good system to use. Once we get into this system a year or so, we'll be able to make changes if we find things that need to be tweaked or changed. It'll be a lot easier than it was in the previous access system, and we will have support of our IR department in order to make the changes. So that is the extent of the update that I have for the Homeland Security system that we're going to be using. And I'll give it back to you, Greg.
All right, thank you, Paul. Appreciate those updates. And the final 2 program-specific updates are going to be given by Peter Schaefer, so I'll turn it over to Peter.
Thanks, Greg. I'll be talking about our revisions to the procedures to implement the Texas Surface Water Quality Standards, followed by updates on our 401 certification process and changes that have taken place with that. So first of all, regarding our revisions to the IPs is what we call them, the procedures to implement Texas Surface Water Quality Standards. We call those our IPs for short. We will follow behind the standards revisions, and so our timeline will be revised, and we'll provide that information once our revised timeline is completed. The revisions that we're looking at, the main things are regarding our whole effluent toxicity procedures. These are the procedures for reasonable potential analysis. These have been in place since around 2015, so there's nothing new there. It's just a matter of getting those memorialized into our IPs. And then updates to our tables. These are things like low flow 7Q2 and harmonic mean flows for classified segments. Updates to our classified segment ambient water quality values. Updates to our federally listed threatened and endangered species table. This is to address species that have been added to the list or removed from the list. Updates to our minimum analytical levels. Inclusion of bioequivalency factors, BEFs. This is a way to help screening for dioxin and furans, updates, well, not updates, inclusion of pH screening procedures for certain entities that discharge directly to classified segments. And these are currently in use, and we've been doing this since about 2016. So these screenings occur for major municipal facilities. These are dischargers that have a flow of 1 mgd or more that discharge directly to a classified segments, or industrial dischargers discharging to a classified segment that discharge processed wastewater. And then finally, just generally tidying up the IPs and correcting errors or omissions, references to page numbers, that kind of thing. So that is, in a nutshell, our revisions to the IPs. And now I'll just go right into our information about 401 certifications. I will add that you can check our website. If you just Google procedures to implement the Texas Surface Water Quality Standards, that'll bring up our webpage, and that's got draft documents for pH screening procedures, the whole effluent toxicity screenings, the tables that I mentioned for the harmonic mean flows, 7Q2 flow, classified segment, ambient water quality data. All of that is on our webpage if you want to take a look at that. All right, switching gears to our 401 certification procedures. Trying to keep up with the federal rules for this has been kind of like watching a tennis match. It's just changing back and forth. In 2020, EPA came out with a 401 certification rule that really changed our process for how we review, not for the substance of our reviews, but essentially just the logistics of how we go about from A to Z providing a 401 certification. And so this had a requirement for pre-filing meeting requests, and then a requirement that you had to wait 30 days before submitting a 401 certification request. So just about the time we got all that worked out and got our process working smoothly, that rule was vacated by a California district court on October 21st, 2021. But luckily, that doesn't affect the substance of our reviews, because it was more just a procedural, it just affects the procedural way that 401s are processed, but our reviews are done to ensure consistency with our Texas surface water quality standards, and those standards don't change with the changing federal regulations. So all the 401 certifications that we provided under the 2020 rule remain valid. They're consistent with our standards, and so there's no need to go back and revisit those certifications. Our process will remain pretty similar to the 2020 rule in that we will accept 401 pre-filing meeting requests. That's not a requirement, but you can certainly provide us with that information to get us headed down the right path, giving us a little early information about what project is being proposed, but we don't want that information to be submitted too far ahead of the Corps' 404 certification process, because we want, before we get too involved in a project, we want to know that a 401 certification is going to be needed, first of all, and then what type. It might be a nationwide permit that could be used. in which case it wouldn't need an individual 401 certification. The one exception for that is the nationwide 16 because of our 300 milligram per liter TSS requirement. So then we do require a 401 certification request to be submitted, and we ask that those be submitted when the public notice comes out, the Corps' public notice. That way we're not getting too far ahead of the Corps' process or too far behind it, and we can ensure a streamlined parallel review process with the Army Corps of Engineers. The 2020 rule had a reasonable period of time requirement that the Army Corps of Engineers would provide TCEQ with a reasonable period of time to provide that 401 certification. That is no longer a requirement. However, the intent behind that requirement still remains. The Corps has a finite timeline that they must meet. And so we work closely with the Corps to ensure that they can meet that deadline. And so we have a goal of providing a 401 certification decision within 60 days of receiving a 401 certification request, provided we have a complete 401 certification request that includes all the information we need and all of our water quality concerns have been addressed. And those forms, the pre-filing meeting request form and our 401 certification request form, are available on our webpage. And you can Google 401 certification request Texas, and that'll bring up our webpage, and that provides information. I will be updating those documents to address the vacated rule, so those will be updated slightly, but you can still use those existing forms, and that'll provide everything we need for reviewing our your 401 certification requests. So that concludes my information about the IP revisions and the 401 certification requests.
All right, thank you so much, Peter. Appreciate that. We're now going to transition over into several general permit updates, and to kick that off, I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca Villalba, who's going to talk about the construction general permit. Rebecca.
Thank you, Greg. I will go ahead and start with the update to the construction general permit amendment. That is TXR 150000. So this general permit, just in case you're not familiar with it, regulates stormwater discharges from construction activities, and it's scheduled to expire March 8th of 2023. TCEQ initiated an amendment with our renewal to this permit to expand the applicability for non-exempt oil and gas construction activities in response to the transfer of state and federal regulatory authority to TCEQ for discharges associated with crude oil, natural gas exploration, development, and production facilities. Please note that this permit amendment will not affect or have an impact on the existing permittees that we have under our 2018 issued construction general permit. The expiration date is not going to change. It's going to stay the same, expires March 8th of 2023. And the conditions that those permittees will need to operate are still going to stay. We didn't change those. Existing oil and gas activity permittees that are under EPA's permit, they need to continue operating under that permit until they apply with, under our permit. So the new oil and gas activities in Texas continue to apply to EPA right now until we have our permit issued. The permit that EPA has for us for Texas is TXR 10 F as in Frank 000. That is part of EPA's national construction general permit. Once we issue our general permit, then those entities need to come into the fold under our own state TPDS permit. So again, the purpose of the amendment is to include in the general permit applicability the non-exempt stormwater discharges from construction activities associated with oil and gas exploration, production, processing, or treatment operations or transmission facilities. And also to replace the EPA-issued MPDS construction general permit that I just mentioned. That was effective on June of 2019, and it's set to expire February 16 of this year, just next month, a couple of weeks away. So since the last time that we met under this Water Quality Advisory Work Group meeting, the latest action that we've had is that the comment period ended. We proposed a general permit, the draft general permit, on our Texas Register as well as in the Houston Chronicle newspaper on September 24th for a 30-day comment period. The comment period ended on October 25th. We received comments, we reviewed them, compiled them, and prepared a response to comments document. The proposed changes definitely are limited to just, the oil and gas delegation. So we expanded the applicability of the general permit, as I just mentioned. Operators with an active authorization under the existing general permit, under our existing general permit issued in 2018, do not have to submit a new or a renewal NOI at this time. You worry about that until the permit gets renewed in 2023. But for now, this amendment that we're going to issue shortly, existing permittees under our general permit do not need to do anything. However, those operators that are regulated under the EPA-issued construction general permit that have an ongoing construction activity that will require them to obtain authorization under our TCEQ amended general permit, they are going to have 90 days from the effective date of our amended permit when it's issued and effective to submit an application to us. So please be sure that you do that. Right now, currently, our permit is scheduled to go before the commission next week on January 26, 2022. We're going to present it to the commission for approval of the proposed permit. It includes the fact sheet as well as our response to comments document. We only received a couple of comments, but we did still prepare a response to comments document. The permit did not have to be revised based on that comment. So please, if you're interested, please attend the commissioner's agenda next Wednesday at 9:30, and we currently are item number 4. We anticipate that the permit will be issued and it will be effective in a couple of days after that. So we're scheduled to hopefully have it be effective January 28th. So then that will start a 90-day renewal period. Also, we just were notified yesterday the EPA's construction general permit, their MPDS general permit, was just issued January 18th, just a couple of days ago, and it has an effective date of February 16th. So as of that date, they would not be receiving applications because they don't have that TXR 10F000 permit under that permit anymore. They removed the Texas piece from their MPDS permit. So entities will not go to EPA anymore. They will continue to then apply under our general permit that hopefully will be issued and effective the end of next week. So with that being said, our e-permit system is being updated. There's going to be new applications. So if you, for some reason, have a pending application in our e-permitting system, you probably received an email yesterday, and you will receive one, next week, where we're letting you know to please continue processing that application. Otherwise, we're going to archive everything at the end of January 27 to be ready and unveil the new application that has just a couple of questions related to the new oil and gas activities. Nothing else has really changed, but everybody's going to have to start using the new application. So that is coming up, as well as we have, our webpage is updated, so please check those frequently. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us. But again, this amendment is really only to address the non-exempt oil and gas activities. So we will put on the chat box the link where you can go find out more about who's exempt and who's not exempt. Last week or this week, just recently, within the week, we received from EPA an updated list And it seems like there are about 2,500 entities that currently are regulated under EPA's national permit. Of course, EPA regulates the small and large construction sites with an NOI, and we don't. We only require the large construction sites to submit a notice of intent. So we're not exactly sure how much, what universe that's going to be, but it is a pretty heavy universe. And the Small Business Government Assistance group is doing advocate newsletters, gov delivery emails, as well as outreach to make sure that everybody that needs help is, we have somebody to help you. So feel free to contact us if you have questions. So moving on to the other part of the construction zone permits. So right now that's the amendment. So now moving on to the renewal. So the renewal of the general permit typically starts 18 months to a year before the permit expires. As I said, the permit expires in March of 2023. So we started the renewal process September of last year. We had a stakeholder meeting in October where we presented preliminary proposed changes based on internal input, based on what comments we receive over the permit cycle, things that we feel could be done better or improved on the permit. So we presented those preliminary proposed changes, and then stakeholders had 2 weeks to provide input on those changes and any other input that they wanted. So we had a very good participation. We had really good comments. We took all those comments to heart, just as we did the internal comments that we received with TCEQ program. Programs out there at TCEQ. We took the stakeholder comments, we reviewed them carefully, we did research. So we now have a draft permit that we are finalizing to go ahead and begin briefings with management in the next couple of weeks so that we can get permission to submit the draft permit to EPA for their 90-day review so that they can give us approval, and hopefully if they do give us comments that they're, easy, good comments, that we can work quickly so that we can move the permit to the public notice process and 30-day comment period. The major, changes, other than, the oil and gas, that once we approve the oil and gas permit, that is going to be now the permit that we're going to be renewing. And so for that, we are, of course, also adding another provision based on House Bill 7 that was passed or approved during the special legislative session that we just had last year. We are adding a provision for permit coverage for construction or operation of a facility that is licensed for the storage of high-level radioactive waste. So that is something that the bill, requires, that we do not approve any construction for a facility that's storing high-level radioactive waste. We're also clarifying large construction site notices. They must be maintained until final stabilization is achieved. Also, we're trying to clarify that compliance with the permit is required until the operator submits the termination of a notice of termination of authorization. Also, we're trying to include additional requirements for site maps and descriptions so that entities clearly identify the property boundaries, and that for soil disturbing activities that they note the spacing, including the demolition activities. So there's just a little bit more information that we would like to be included in the site maps and descriptions. So those are a few of the major changes. If you really want to know every single preliminary proposed change that we presented to the stakeholders, you can go to our Stormwater Stakeholder Group webpage. We will put that link on the chat, the meeting chat for today, so you can go to that webpage and see what presentation we provided as well as the proposed changes. So again, the permit right now is moving forward to hopefully be approved by our management so that we can send it to EPA either at the end of next month, early March, so that they can review it. And then the public notice process and public comment period will be sometime later this year in the fall. And then hopefully everything will go smoothly and we will have a permit issued by March of 2023 when this permit is set to expire. And those are my updates on the construction zone permit. Thank you. Back to you, Greg.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Next up, Michaela Coleman is going to give an update on the multi-sector general permit, so I will hand it over to her.
Thank you, Greg. So like Greg mentioned, I'm going to talk today about our multi-sector general permit, also called the MSGP or TXR 050,000. Specifically, I want to give an update on the implementation of monitoring and reporting electronically with this general permit. So just some background in case you're not familiar with this permit. This general permit regulates stormwater discharges from industrial activities, and we just renewed it in August. So August 14 of 2021, we renewed the general permit, and all permittees under this general permit must report monitoring data electronically through NetDMR, unless they qualify for and obtain a waiver from electronic reporting. At this time, currently today, the system is not ready for our permittees to go in just yet. We're working with EPA right now so that we can flow all the necessary data from each permittee's application into the system so that it is going to be requesting the right information from each permittee. So later this month, it's going to be ready, we hope. You can check our web pages for updates. Just the main stormwater page will have a quick blurb about it, or we have a more specific monitoring and reporting web page for the multi-sector general permit you could navigate to. So we are posting updates as they happen as far as the monitoring and reporting. And then since this is a new requirement for our permittees, they haven't been required to use NetDMR before. We are working with TCEQ's Small Business and Local Government Assistance Group to host a webinar. So they're planning a free webinar about reporting specifically the multi-sector general permit monitoring data in the NetDMR system. Right now, that's tentatively scheduled for next month, February 7th of 2022. More details about the webinar will be available soon. It hasn't been officially announced yet, but if you're interested in that, be on the lookout for that official announcement, which will go out in the Small Business and Local Government Assistance Group Advocate newsletter. So if you're not signed up to take part in those newsletters, you can check them out on their webpage. And again, I can try and post that link in the meeting chat today so you can access it, or it'll be available in the notes later. You can also sign up for the Small Business and Local Government Assistance Gov Delivery email service, where they send out periodic updates, which would include information about the webinar. And that's something you can sign up for on their webpage as well. And I can post the link for that and keep it in the notes from the meeting. And so that's really all the updates I have as far as implementing the electronic reporting for the MSGP. And so I will turn it back to Greg. Thanks.
Thank you, Michaela. Next up, and actually for the final three general permit updates, we're going to go over to Shannon Gibson. Shannon. I think you're muted, Shannon. Yeah, still not hearing you, Shannon. I don't know if you're accidentally double clicking that or. All right, Shannon might be having some technical issues there, so why don't we go ahead and move on through our agenda, and we'll come back to Shannon here in just a little bit. So next up, we've got some rule. Oh, actually, you there, Shannon?
Yes, it finally unclicked. I apologize.
All right, thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. So I've got 3 general permits to provide an update on. Thank you for your patience. The first being the pesticide general permit, the TXG 870000. Little background, this general permit authorizes the application of pesticides into or over, including near waters of the United States for the control of mosquito and other pests, insect pests, vegetation and algae pests, animal pests, area-wide pests, and forest canopy pests. The Commission did renew this general permit on October 20th of last year. Facilities that are currently authorized under this general permit are required to submit a renewal notice of intent, or NOI, by February 1st of this year. The next update would be for the petroleum bulk stations and in terminals general permit, the TXG 340000, which authorizes the discharge of facility wastewater, contact stormwater, and stormwater associated with industrial activities into or adjacent to water in the state from petroleum bulk stations and terminals. TCEQ is proposing to renew and amend the existing permit. The current permit is set to expire on October 24th, 2022, and the draft permit is currently under development. It has been submitted and approved by EPA, and the next step for this draft permit will be for it to go out for a 30-day public notice, which we anticipate occurring in mid-March of this year. The third general permit that I'm going to provide an update on is the concrete batch general permit, the TXG 110000. This general permit authorizes the discharge of facility wastewater and stormwater associated with industrial activities into or adjacent to water in the state from ready mixed concrete plants, products plants, and their associated facilities, specifically under SIC codes 3271, 3272, and 3273. The Commission also renewed the existing general permit on October 20th of last year, and the facilities that are currently authorized under this general permit are required to submit a renewal notice of intent by February 5th of 2022. The NOI for this particular general permit must be submitted online through the e-permit system. All right, and those are my updates. So I'm going to turn it back over to Greg. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate that. And now we're going to get into our final group or section of updates, and those are rule updates. And to kick us off, Michaela Coleman is going to provide an update on Chapter 311. Michaela.
Thank you, Greg. So I'm going to give the first rule update is about the sand mining rule for the San Jacinto River watershed, which we've been giving you updates for quite a while if you're a regular attendee. If you're not familiar, this rule is a result of petitions. So the Texas Aggregates and Concrete Association and the Lake Houston Area Grassroots Flood Prevention Initiative Group, also called TACA and FPI respectively, filed separate but similar petitions for this rulemaking in June of 2020. So both of these organizations recommended that TCEQ adopt a new rule to establish best management practices for sand mining facilities within the San Jacinto River watershed. The rulemaking defines a specific area within the watershed where the sand mines would be regulated, and it adds a new subchapter within 30 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 311, the Watershed Protection Rules. So this rulemaking for the petition is now complete, and the final rule was adopted by the Commission on December 15th of 2021. And we published that final rule in the Texas Register on December 31st of 2021. Which means the rule became effective on January 6, 2021. So it is in effect right now. We have been working closely again with our small business and local government assistance group to conduct outreach and notify any potentially affected facilities in the watershed of these new requirements. And that was done through emails and phone calls. And we did reach out to those facilities in December of 2021 to let them know. just shortly after the commission approved that rule. So moving forward, we are working to develop guidance materials about the new rule, and we're exploring the possibility of creating a map viewer that we would post on the TCEQ website to help customers view the watershed area where the rule applies, and hopefully figure out, if a customer sand mine is within that watershed and therefore subject to the rule. So look forward to updates on that. We are hopeful that we can create something like that for the sand mines in the area and just for the public to see that watershed. So kind of in conjunction with actually drafting the rule, we drafted a B&P's guidance document. So because the petitions and then the final rule language requires TCEQ to develop a guidance document of best management practices, or B&Ps, for the sand mines, we worked kind of at the same time as we were developing the rule, we worked on creating the document to accompany it. And so shortly before the rule is adopted, we did finalize that document, and it is published on the website. It is regulatory guidance number 555. So you could just search the TCEQ webpage RG 555 if you're interested in reading it. And so we did prepare that document, working closely with the petitioners and stakeholders, as well as other agency staff, to gather all the input we could to make it a useful document, and also, complying with the requirements of this new rule. So those are the updates I have for everyone. Back to you, Greg.
Thank you, Michaela. And we're going to go back to Shannon Gibson, who's going to give us 3 more rule updates. So please go ahead, Shannon.
Thanks, Greg. Can y'all hear me this time? My first update is on 30 TAC Chapter 305, the consolidation of TEPD's program regulations. This specifically would move chapters 308, 314, and 315 of the Texas Administrative Code to Chapter 305 under Subchapter P, all of which contain adoption by reference of federal TEPD's regulations. Additionally, Chapter 308, subchapters C and J would be repealed in response to the 2019 Quad Rules Review. This rule was approved on September 22nd of last year. It was put out for public comment in October, and the public comment period closed on November 9th, 2021. It has moved into the adoption phase, and it is scheduled for the Commissioner's agenda on March 30th of this year. We also have an update for chapters 321 and 351 of the Texas Administrative Code to remove obsolete subchapters. Specifically, Chapter 321 subchapters E, F, and L would be repealed. Similarly, subchapter D of Chapter 351 would be repealed. These chapters were determined to be obsolete in the 2019 Quad Rules Review. It was approved on September 22nd of last year. Similarly, put out for public comment in October, which closed on November 9th, 2021. It has moved into the adoption phase and is also scheduled to go to the Commissioner's agenda on March 30th of this year. Our final rule to provide an update on would be 30 TAC Chapter 7 related to the Aquaculture Memorandum of Understanding. We are amending the Memorandum of Understanding with the Texas Department of Agriculture and Texas Parks and Wildlife Department to remove the Texas Department of Agriculture and update existing provisions under 7.103. The comment period, or the rule update was put out for comment in December, and the comment period ended on January 5th earlier this month. It has also moved into the adoption phase, and it is scheduled to go to the Commissioner's agenda on April 27th. Additional information can be obtained on these rules, and I think we will include that link in the chat window. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over to you, Greg.
Thank you, Shannon. And last but not least, we are going to hear a Chapter 217 rule update from Lewis Herron. So take it away, Lewis.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be real short and sweet. The Plan and Spec team is currently working on the design criteria. We're looking at updating our clarifying some of the language and the criteria. One of the areas that we're spending a lot of time on is the new nutrient section. If you're familiar with the design criteria, you know that nutrient section was real general. We're trying to not make it, we're trying to give a flexibility, but we have been asked to give more information on what we need for the nutrient section. And we're looking at total phosphorus removal, since you're seeing more and more plants with phosphorus, and total nitrogen. So we're setting that up right now. We are planning on having our stakeholder meetings, and we're hoping to have these in person with a deal for virtual. But we would really like to have them in person, because you end up with engineers getting into a room. We have better discussions when we have in person than we have virtual. And we're hoping to have these things towards the end of March, first and early April. And we are foreseeing hopefully getting permission to publish these rules going out for public comment sometime later this fiscal year. The other thing is we will be talking in detail on the design criteria and nutrients portion at Texas Water in April, and we'll be talking again at the trade fair, which hopefully will be in May. Also, we will, Paul, myself, and Balthazar will be at Texas Water this year. So if you have comments and you want to talk about any certain thing, feel free to come over and talk to us, because we're looking for as much input, because we want to make this rule as flexible and as user-friendly as possible. And that is it in short, sweet manner. So it's back to you. So here's Greg.
Thanks so much, Lewis. We have now come to the question and answers portion of our meeting. So we will start reading the questions that you've submitted and responding to them one by one in the order that we received them. And so I will start to read off the questions and then hand it over to the appropriate person to give the response. So our first question is, how should electronic submissions be submitted, by flash drive, etc.? I'm going to first go to Erica on that, since she gave the presentation on electronic application submissions, but feel free to pass it around as needed.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So I did share some information in the public chat on the website, our website that talks about submitting electronic applications, and it's through the agency's secured FTP site that we're requesting electronic submissions to be made. We also have created a designated email box that can be sent these that can be used to enter into the FTP site. And so that email box, the email address is in that FAQ. And so that is the preferred method. We do not want USBs or CD drives, or, you know, for them to be sent to certain people directly via email, preferably. But the agency does have a assured and tried method for submitting and receiving electronic submissions from external stakeholders, and that's through our FTP site. So Greg, I hope that answered the question, but let me know if I need to provide any additional info.
Thank you so much, Erica. I believe you addressed it, and kind of related to the first question. The next one is there a maximum size file that the TCEQ can receive electronically? And I'll go back to you, Erica.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Greg. I don't know why 35, what is it, MB? I'm sorry, y'all, I'm not tech savvy. It's not gigabytes, it's not terabytes, it's whatever is below that. I want to say it's maybe 35. Do you know, Greg, off the top of your head? Maybe 35 or 25. I think 25 is via email. But you know what? That FAQ document has the link to the FTP site website if y'all have any questions, and I'm pretty sure the answer might be there. So what I can do, Greg, is I can peruse that website really quick and try to respond back to that specific question in the chat after I know for sure. But there is a limit, and hopefully that does not impair or negatively affect people's ability to submit electronic applications to us.
Great, thank you, Erica. And the next question has to do with pre-application meetings, so don't go too far away. The question is sorry, I skipped it. Is it possible to submit a draft for, and I'm assuming that's a draft of the application, is it possible to submit a draft for a permit change prior to the actual submittal? Perhaps this could be done in conjunction with the pre-application meeting as a response.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And so the answer to that question, Greg, would be sure. You know, I know that our permitting staff and staff throughout the division are happy to assist with questions and making changes to permit authorizations, especially when they're kind of in the draft phase and y'all want to get a feel for stuff. We're more than happy to have those kind of conversations before stuff is put pen to paper, if you will. And so, yeah, we can definitely talk through any permit amendments or any changes and kind of give guidance on maybe what kind of application is submitted, how that change would impact the permitting process, because depending on, you know, the type of amendment, it could definitely influence the different permit action that will be available at that time. And, you know, we're definitely here to help. So the short and sweet answer to that question is yes, Greg, contact us, especially if, you know, you have a tried and true permit writer that's assigned to your permit, that, you know, we definitely are here to assist in that way. So feel free to call the assigned permit writer. If that's not the case, then feel free to give our main line a phone call, and, you know, we will definitely get you over to somebody who can assist and answer any questions and talk things through. And then, of course, we'll be available for a pre-application meeting as well. So I hope that answered that question, Greg.
Yes, thanks so much, Erica. Looks like we have one more pre-application meeting question, and this one is a pre-application meeting being used by any other divisions? And Erica, I don't know if you or anyone else knows.
Yeah, I can take that answer, Greg. And so while the Water Quality Division does not profess to be subject matter experts for any other permitting programs, yes, we do not perform pre-application meetings all on our own. I am personally aware of us in collaboration with other permitting areas that have provided pre-application guidance to entities, just to really assist the front end process or the application preparation process before stuff is officially submitted to the TCEQ for review. So the answer to that question is yes, the Water Quality Division does not conduct pre-application meetings alone. There are other parts of the agency that do the same thing.
Thank you, Erica. And actually, I may have been wrong. It looks like there's one more pre-application meeting question. If you do not have a pre-application meeting, will those applications be returned?
Oh, I've got a lot of questions here today. Okay, so Greg, no, I can't remember the regulation off the top of my head. Sorry, the person who asked that question, but there is a process for returning applications. We do follow that because it's in rule, or is it regulation? I'm tripping up. It's in writing, our process for returning applications. I'm going to say no, we won't return it, but you know, it would be in the best interest of the permittee or the application or the applicant to have that pre-application meeting with us. looks like we're requiring it for new and major amendments. And so if it's not done prior to the application being submitted, I would say that the applicant or the permittee should be prepared for us to request to meet upon receipt, just to make sure that, you know, we can talk about maybe what the submission is, and discuss what the process looks like. And so it'll be a very collaborative process, but we are requesting that the regulated community work with us as much as possible, because it truly is in the best interest of everyone involved. So I hope that answered the question, Greg.
Yes, great answer. Thank you, Erica. Actually going to go back to electronic applications real quick. So the question is, what does TCEQ define or envision in an electronic application? I see this as a PDF of the application, forms, exhibits, appendices, maps, etc., converted to PDF from the Word, AutoCAD, etc. formats. Note that most companies, including ours, do not maintain paper copies of any documents.
Gotcha. Greg, you have me all excited. I thought I was out the hot seat, but okay. So as far as electronic applications, there's not specifically a permit or like a program that defines that for us. It's pretty much anything that's not hard copy. I could be saying too much. I could be incorrect. Robert, please feel free to jump in and provide additional guidance, especially if I'm going in the wrong path. But an electronic application would be a Microsoft Word document. I know that our permit application forms are in Microsoft Word. It could be a PDF, whether that's the electronic file PDF or a scanned version of the PDF. Electronic is electronic. And so I hope that kind of provides additional clarity. I definitely hear the commenter or the person who inquired by saying that they don't maintain hard copies of the permit application. You know, TCEQ is held to a different standard. We have a different records retention policy, but I hope that does not impact the ability to submit electronic applications to us. Again, this is voluntary and it's in the best interest of everyone involved in the permitting process for us to get stuff in quick, move it through our process quick, and have a more open dialogue throughout the process is really beneficial to everyone. And I do want to say that, Greg, I may be stepping out of line, but you know, in all the years that I particularly wrote permits and reviewed permit applications, I never actually reviewed one that was handwritten. They were all filled out electronically and maybe printed off. Like I never, ever got an application where somebody wrote in the stuff in ink and submitted that. So hopefully that is a good thing, that, you know, people out there can provide the electronic versions of what they're already working on. And it's not too much of a complication, but it really would make our job easier. So Greg, I hope I answered that question.
Yes, absolutely, Erica. Thank you. And I think we might actually be able to give you a breather now. This next one's actually not a question. It is about a pre-application meeting. That's just a comment. So I'll go ahead and read it for everyone. This is not a question, just a comment about the pre-application meeting. The TCEQ Water Quality Group provided a few pre-application meetings while we were splitting our TPDS permits at 2 sites. This was beneficial help for a complicated split. So thank you so much for that comment. We appreciate that. Next up, and I believe this is oil and gas related, but correct me if I'm wrong, is the inventory spreadsheet available to the public? And I'm going to ask Dr. Gray to come on and hopefully he knows what that means.
Yes, I know what they're referring to. It's the inventory sheet for all the Railroad Commission and EPA permits. And unfortunately, no, it is not available for public. That's mostly for our reference, and we're mostly maintaining it for our purposes.
Thank you very much. Actually got another question for you. Have any new individual permits been issued under this program for oil and gas?
And no, not yet. We have about a handful of permits that have been applied for, but as of yet, most of them are still under administrative review, so none have been issued in full as of yet.
Thank you. Another one here as well. Will House Bill 2771 include flowback water or just produced water discharges?
For that one, I may need to reach out and do some research. I'm under the initial impression that it would be included under the general term of produced water, but I will need to look further into that.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gray. And I think we got one last one for you here, at least in this part of the questions. How many permit applications have been received for discharge of treated produced oil and gas water, and how many have been approved? And maybe you've kind of already alluded to that, but go ahead, Dr. Gray.
Yes, so essentially what I said before, we've had about under a dozen or so actual applications submitted, and none have been approved as of yet.
Thank you so much. Looks like we'll have at least a couple questions for Paul here regarding Mr. Broshai's presentation. Homeland Security information is updated and populated via steers. What exactly would be our requirements pertaining to WQEPS? Paul?
Okay, if I'm understanding what they're asking, WQEPS is a steers module. What will be in steers when the yearly update is available and you look at the data is last year's information. So currently we're getting ready to update the 2021 data with 2022 emergency contacts and any site information that changes. Typically, once you get a lot of the information in, like lift station data and everything that we would need for generators, there shouldn't be a need to change it until you either discontinue use of a lift station or add new ones. But what WQEPS does is it allows you to go in and review the information that currently exists. So you're reviewing the 2021 data and supplying any updates to that information through the steers module, WQEPS, to populate the WQEPS database, where we will pull it out and send it to EPA's contractor to upload into the emergency response software response manager. So all you're responsible for is performing updates as necessary, but also reviewing the data that exists from last year to see if it needs to be changed and different contacts need to be input.
Thank you, Paul. I got another question for you regarding Mr. Broshai's presentation. He suggested that we gather the information before entering the data. Can we print off the screens/forms prior to entering the data to help us know and gather the necessary data?
Yes, I would say that you could do screen prints of it. That would require you going into this steer system, WQEPS system, pulling up your permit account with your ID and password and the key for that water quality permit, opening up every window that is part of the system and having a screenshot of that information. That way you could do that. Also, what we're trying to do with our user's manual is to show what information is there. So that may be another possibility. We are going to go entry field by entry field for the user's manuals. So either one of those would help you gather the information that you need so that you have it and don't run into any timeout issues when you're performing data entry.
Thank you so much, Paul. Next question regarding Mr. Easley's presentation, which I think it meant Mr. Schaefer's. Our companies are required to conduct wet testing only because of our industry category. We haven't had a wet test failure in over 15 plus years, about the age of the facility, and the activities which generate wastewater haven't changed. Perhaps not the place or time for this question, but how do companies in this situation that are only required to test because of industry category obtain a waiver for wet testing? I'll go ahead and take a crack at that, and I'll let Peter chime in with any corrections or additions. But basically, my understanding is that those requirements for the wet testing don't change. They continue and persist. Permit cycle to permit cycle, and I'm not aware of any avenue to get a waiver from those. I do know that there are opportunities to reduce the frequency of testing based on test results, lack of failures, et cetera, but don't believe there's are waivers to eliminate the need for testing. I guess, Peter, anything to add to that?
No, I don't have anything to add. That's spot on. Thanks, Greg.
All right, thank you, Peter. Next question, if I have an active EPA permit for oil and gas construction and my project should be completed within the next 90 days, do I still need to get coverage under the TCEQ permit? And I'm gonna have sorry, Rebecca can take that one, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Greg. So that's a good question. If you're sure that you do not need coverage, past the 90 days, then you do not need to submit an application. But if there's any doubt, weather, right now we're in the winter, if there's any weather issues or whatever, it just might be safer for you to go ahead and apply so that you can continue that for safety cushion in case it is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next question, will all MSGP annual DMRs need to be reported or only those with exceedances in net DMR? Michaela?
Thanks, Greg. Yes, I can answer that one. So it depends a little bit on the type of annual monitoring you might be referring to. So if you're familiar with the MSGP, there is in general 3 types of monitoring: the annual hazardous metals. If you have federal effluent limitation guidelines, you'd have to report those, for benchmark monitoring. So the hazardous metals monitoring is only reported if there's an exceedance, and that's still going to be the same with the electronic reporting. The federal numeric effluent limitations, you have to report them no matter what, whether you exceed or whether you meet. Those have to be reported if your facility has those. And then for benchmark monitoring, you are required to report your benchmarks unless you obtain a waiver for years 3 and 4. So definitely for these first 2 years of the permit cycle, the benchmark monitoring must be reported for everyone who that applies to. Feel free to contact me afterward if you have more specific questions about a specific facility and what monitoring applies to them. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. I see down further that this next question looked like it already got answered, so I'm going to go to the next one, and that is, how might the rule apply to detention basins where a contractor is selling the soils / sand, but the ultimate intent is a stormwater detention basin? Sorry if this is in the rule, as I'm out of the loop, and I think maybe this goes to you, Michaela.
Yeah, I think that is for me. So it's a great question. The rule defines sand mining facility, and the definition is based mostly on 2 standard industrial classification codes, or SIC codes. So the rule specifies that a sand mining facility is an aggregate production operation that performs the activities described by SIC codes 1442 and 1446. So most likely, just based on that quick description you provided, the rule probably wouldn't apply to you, but if you want to talk in more detail about it, feel free to contact me, and I can try helping you determine if that rule might apply to that particular situation. Thanks. Back to you, Greg.
Thank you, Michaela. Next question, MSGP question for Michaela and/or Shannon. What's the difference between MSGP Sector P Industrial Activity SIC 5171, Petroleum Bulk Station and Terminals, and the TXG 340000 Petroleum Bulk Stations Terminal General Permit Shannon provided an update on? Maybe we'll start with you, Michaela.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a plan. So I'll try and describe what the MSGP covers specific to that code, and then maybe Shannon, you could explain any difference you notice from the other general permit. So the multi-sector general permit, first and foremost, is stormwater only. So every type of industry covered under that permit, we're only allowing the discharge of stormwater and certain non-stormwater discharges. So any kind of wastewater would not be permitted under that permit. And then within the MSGP Sector P, SIC code 5171, as the permit is written now, will only cover the facilities we used to only have permission to cover. So you have to think back before we got our delegation, because that permit has not yet been updated. So before we had delegation, it was split between EPA, Railroad, and us. And so the permit is written so that petroleum bulk storage stations that contained only processed, so like not crude oil, could obtain coverage for their stormwater discharges. And so as of today, the permit is still written that way. It hasn't been updated yet. So if you were a facility with a crude oil bulk station and you needed coverage for your stormwater discharges, you would be obtaining your coverage through EPA's MSGP. And then again, the major difference between the industrial stormwater permit and other industrial general permits is that it's purely a stormwater permit. It's not going to cover any kind of wastewater or commingled wastewater and stormwater. So I think I'll pass it off to Shannon.
Thank you so much, Michaela. And you hit the nail on the head. The primary difference on the TXG 340000 for petroleum bulk station terminal discharges is that you are able to discharge facility wastewaters or facility wastewaters that have been commingled with stormwater. And so if you are going to have any kind of a facility or process wastewater to discharge in addition to any stormwater that comes into contact, then you would need to obtain coverage underneath the TXG 34. And there are going to be a different suite of limitations that would apply and sampling. I would need to do a comparison between the two to know exactly what those differences are. But like Michaela said, please feel free to contact me directly and we can review those together and see exactly what the limitation differences are.
Thank you, Shannon and Michaela, for that. We're going to jump back to the electronic applications topic. So Erica, hopefully you got a little bit of rest. Question is, with applications being electronic, will that enable the public to review these applications without having to go to a library?
Back in the hot seat, huh, Greg? So I am not aware of our public participation process changing at all in light of our requests for voluntary submissions of electronic applications. Now, this will help us internally complete our administrative and technical reviews within the division to issue or to send out that draft permit and hopefully expedite our overall permitting process. But as far as the public participation participation aspect that really is overseen and supervised, if you will, by the Office of the Chief Clerk within the agency. I am not aware of that process changing, which does entail, publishing in a local newspaper at this time, as well as making sure that the permit application and all of the documents related to that permit action are on public display for, any concerned or interested member of the public to go and view and then provide public comment on, because the agency does respond to every timely filed public comment within that public comment period. And so that is what I know about that question, Greg. But again, that may be an asterisk where to be determined, but things are still proceeding in that fashion at this time.
Thank you, Erica. Next question, is it anticipated that the Phase 2 MS4 SWMPs will be formally approved this year? And I'll pass that one to Michaela.
Thank you, Greg. Yes, the short answer is yes, they should be approved this year. It sounds like you probably have been keeping up with the progress on those application reviews. You might be aware that the big holdup has been working out the process with EPA Region 6 and how they were going to perform their review of each application. So we have finalized the process with EPA, which means we are now free to move forward with the final public notice step. So we are actively working on that right now. We're moving things along, so it shouldn't be too long before a few of those start going to public notice and then, ultimately issued this year. Back to you, Greg.
Thank you, Michaela. This next question looks a little bit incomplete, but we'll see if we can get the gist of it. Are there maybe under a dozen oil and gas produced water discharge applications listed on the, and then it stops there. I'll ask Dr. Gray if he might know what the gist of this was. If not, we'll ask the questioner to maybe submit the question again.
Yes, it appears that they finished it if they're published on the TCEQ website. And I would say to this that no, they are not, but any request for that kind of information, if you provide it to us, we'll be happy to help you out and provide you with that information. Similarly, while I said the inventory is not publicly available, we also can provide that information on request.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. Next question, is the Homeland Security required information for all wastewater treatment facilities, domestic and industrial facilities? So Paul, I'll hand that one to you.
Let me see. Which one was that again, Greg? Can you please repeat that? Greg, you're muted.
Thank you, Paul. Sorry about that. So the question is the Homeland Security required information for all wastewater treatment facilities, domestic and industrial facilities? So in other words,
yeah.
is it required for all facilities?
Yes, it is. We are accepting information on both industrial and facility and domestic and private wastewater plants also. They are different entry points once you get into the WQEPS system, but there is a domestic and then there is an industrial. The industrial information is limited compared to what is requested by the domestics.
Thank you, Paul. Next question. Any clarity on TCEQ Environmental Trade Fair this year and future fairs? I know at this point they are planning on having the trade fair in May of this year, but I don't know, Erica or Robert, anyone else has any other information on that?
Yeah, you got it right, Greg. I would still, as far as I know, it's still in the planning phase. That is being coordinated with another part of the agency. So I'm sure that the public and our stakeholders will find out more soon. But we, as far as I know, we're still planning for that event to occur in May. But again, keep an asterisk on that. So I hope that answered the question.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Erica. Next question was Chapter 217, Design Criteria Rule Updates initiated by petition. So Lewis, I'll hand that over to you.
No, I mean, we had a petition and the commission said no, but we are incorporating the petition and this rule revision. We're looking at it and we're making some changes for that petition. But the way the design criteria is written, it is made to be looked at every 5 years because technology keeps changing and stuff that we've looked at, to say 10 years ago, is out of date from what we're seeing nowadays for some of the newer equipment coming down. The flux rates on membranes and stuff like this are all changing. So the design criteria is designed to look at to be updated at least every 5 years, or at least sections of it. So that's what we're really doing. We're updating to the newer technologies. And back to you, Greg.
Thank you very much, Lewis. Next question, and back to electronic applications. Will applications that are submitted electronically be available for public viewing through the CID? Erica?
Yeah, Greg, thank you for this question. So the Commissioner's Integrated Database, or the CID, is really overseen and maintained by our TCEQ Office of the Chief Clerk. And so that is separate from the Water Quality Division. And so I cannot say with any degree of certainty whether or not our request for voluntary electronic applications will correlate to posting those applications electronically through the Commissioner's Integrated Database. Now, what I can say is that, the TCEQ overall does have a process for public participation and providing copies or making the permit applications available to the public. And so without speaking for other program areas or for how the Office of the Chief Clerk does things, we do have a public information request process where the general public can request files from us. And so that is one avenue, as well as the public display option that permittees and applicants do locally within their areas. And, I'll leave it at that. I know that the agency also has historically made permit applications available to the public for viewing at our on-site at our agency. I don't know if that is still going on or how that's being conducted, because again, that's another part of the agency. So unfortunately, I cannot answer that question with any degree of certainty, but I really appreciate that question being posed. So I hope that will work, Greg. But please, if I know the question I think was submitted anonymously, but I would love to talk to the person offline if they have any additional questions or concerns that weren't addressed in this response.
Excellent. Thank you, Erica. And I believe all the remaining questions on my screen look like they have already been addressed. So I guess Michaela for the San Jacinto BMPs and Dr. Gray, oil and gas, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've already covered those, the ones I'm seeing in the new category. So so I believe that is all the questions that we have received. And I'm not seeing any coming from any other sources, so I think we can go ahead and close out the close out the Q&A session. Appreciate everyone's questions, and thank you to everyone on our end who helped answer them. Got a couple announcements to go through real quick before we adjourn the meeting. Of course, the next quarterly meeting is going to take place in April, and specifically on Tuesday, April 19th of this year, and that'll be at our normal starting time of 1:30 in the afternoon. So stay tuned in the future for more details on topics that will be covered for that meeting. As always, we have a website for this stakeholder meeting for the Water Quality Advisory Work Group, and a link for that to that website is included in the meeting agenda. So feel free to avail yourself to that, and you can always go back and look at previous meeting content and materials. Each meeting, including this one today, is recorded and available for viewing on our agency YouTube webpage, and there's a link to that in the meeting agenda as well. So feel free to go back and look at anything you may have missed, or folks that may have missed the meeting wanted to catch up on what was discussed. So that's definitely available resource to y'all as well. So I believe that's all I have as far as announcements and other things to make you aware of. We just want to thank you again for your participation today. As always, it's very beneficial for us to get your feedback and your questions and to continue that dialogue as we continue to implement our permitting program. So thanks you again for your attendance. We're going to go ahead and sign off and adjourn the meeting. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day and week, and y'all stay warm out there. So thank you again, and our meeting is now adjourned. Take care.